Okay, let's go. We got a video for a earphone called the First Light. This is by a new company called Rossi and Wing. They are two classically trained musicians. I'm not sure the instruments they play, but I think I saw them playing at a can jam or some kind of a get together, and I think they were playing violins, if I recall correctly. So this is their first entrance. They sent this to me. I want to say thank you to them and sorry for the delay. This is a very expensive set. If you are a subscriber, go ahead and comment below. Give the video a thumbs up if you actually like it. If you're not a subscriber, why don't you go ahead and subscribe. I give away items that I review to people that watch my channel. If they're expensive, I pass it on to Patreons and give them a chance to bid on it. So thank you for your engagement. This is a set that is, again, it's a beautiful set. For the Founders Edition, it's coming in at a cool $7,700. I have some of this. I don't have all of it. I don't have that blue cable. The cable that comes with it is about $700. The set that I compare it with, because it's expensive, is the PMG Audio APX SE. It's my favorite set currently, and it's also a very expensive set. And it's also from a company that you may not be familiar with, because I believe they're like a sub-company of Craft Ears. So when I cite certain things and say it's lacking or it has a lot, the actual most direct reference that I'm referring to would be the PMG APX SE, just for you to know. The frequency response graph is pretty stable up to the ear gain. This means that, or possibly means that things in the low end, the rhythm section, are not being emphasized. Now, I'm going to bring up one other set, because there's a set called the Moondrop Illumination that has a lot more energy in the upper mids, but it's also got, from the ear gain down, really not much emphasis in the sub bass or mid bass or into the mids. And it's a set that I would consider warm and soft and lacking in technical, but I really do like the replay. But you'd never look at that graph and think that's going to be a warm set. It would actually indicate the other way. That's kind of how graphs sometimes don't really nail it. This would seem to be a shouty set that would distract from the low end, and therefore would probably sound, just on casual listening, like not very energetic in the low end and quite energetic in the upper mids, where the replay is actually smooth and soft, and it doesn't replay like that. So graphs really are limited. Remember, graphs are objective data. As soon as I start to talk about it, or anybody else, and what that implies or replays in audio, it turns into a subjective piece of thing, because we're giving our opinion, and I'm about to give mine. I think that in the low end, which is my library right here, I think that the 808 Roland is a little bit, the 808 Roland, which is Kendrick Lamar, Tupac, Wu-Tang Clan, Ghetto Boys, music like that, which is a good part of my library. I think that the drops for hip-hop are lacking some energy that I would like to be there. It's not quite as potent on some things, and I feel myself wanting to turn it up. This is thankfully a set that you can, because it doesn't start to scream and shout at you immediately upon turning up the volume pot like some sets do. So there is some headroom, but on 77 dB, which I adjust all of my sets to listen to, this is a little bit light right there. As we get into 4 and 5 string bass guitars, the pulls, the plucks, the release, the ringing of the strings, the instruments themselves sound normal. Some replays, like Sultans of Swing, Please Do Not Go, it sounds a little bit tame. Doesn't sound unnatural, like if I was boosting the sub bass and tucking the mid bass, and it sounds like I'm pushing part of the instrument at you and pulling part of it away from you. You can literally hear that. When you do that in the upper mids and treble, you can hear a gong almost wobble, when it's not wobbling in a regular replay and regular tuning. It comes in and out because of the way that the upper mids and treble is cut or boosted. It's very interesting if you have OCD and you listen to stuff repeatedly. So this instrument sounds natural, if not slightly lacking in emphasis, as the graph would indicate. But again, like I said, on the Illumination and some other sets, that doesn't actually happen. It might be down to drivers that are within. The iconic intro kick drum from John Bonham, from the 4th album by Led Zeppelin, which is quite produced. That's why it's iconic. It does, like the 808 drop, sound like it's lacking a little bit of energy and power that I would like. It sounds like a kick drum, of course, but it doesn't sound like it's the overly produced, much talked about entrance to that When the Levee Breaks track from the fourth album. So if you are a person that really likes the low end to be ever present, holding down the mix, this is probably not a set that was aimed at you. As we get further into the review, it's probably going to show you where this is being aimed. In the vocals, which is really how I evaluate mids, because mid bass and upper mid, which are the bookmarks for the vocals, those being pushed up or pushed down can do all kinds of things, and they don't sound good. This set sounds good with Chris Cornell, Lane Staley, Nina doing the cover of Blondie. There's no issues there. It doesn't sound thin or brittle. It doesn't sound swampy or husked up, obviously because of the tuning. But it's also not kind of light. There's a couple exceptions here. Sultans of Swing, Mark Knopfler, him and the bass are really kind of a set in this replay because of where his vocals are and where the bass guitar is. They're kind of overlapping, but they're never really crunching into each other or being squished together with the gear that I listen to, because that would be crap gear. It doesn't sound quite as throaty and deep as I would like it, but it doesn't sound unnatural. This is kind of like the bass guitar. It sounds like an accurate replay, but personally I wish it had a little bit more. But otherwise, the vocals sound very good on this. The harmonics of vocals aren't piercing. They don't sound odd, which brings us to the final part, which is harmonics and overtones, which is essentially 1.5 to 3 and beyond. Most of that is just all the overtones harmonics, which is the fundamental event, like a stick striking the ride cymbal or a finger pulling off of a 4 or 5 string bass guitar and then releasing, or a pick pulling on a string on an electric guitar. Those moments create energy, resonant harmonic energy, which is the residue. Like I said, when I knock my finger on the table for a split second, there's a moment of energy. But most of what you hear is actually the result of my knuckles striking the table, which is the harmonics and overtones. This is an area that can be a deal breaker for a lot of people. If everything else is fine, this is where it's the problem, because you simply can't listen more than 15 minutes without feeling fatigued. And it might not be clear on the graph exactly where the point is. People point to 6K or 5 and they assume that, but I think because we compress 19,000 hertz into half of this graph, people don't know for sure, maybe for quite a long time, or it depends on the type of transducer that's within, or it depends on what they're listening to or the instruments. I think there's a lot more variation going on in the upper mids and treble and what bothers people than a graph might indicate, because it's not quite as stretched out as the mid bass is or other parts of the graph. This does that great, and this goes back to where they maybe get their inspiration, which is they are classic musicians and they play instruments like the violin, for example, and that the string section get on you a lot, and it would be in the upper mids and treble that will most likely offend you as far as fatigue goes for instruments like that. And again, Tchaikovsky, Verdi, and Vivaldi are composers that I listen to, and at no point did I think, okay, that's over the top. That's going to be too much. Like ELO with the keyboards, and that's a good album to judge whether or not I'm going to be able to listen to something for a long period of time. This is fine with that. So it's not great in the low end for this reviewer. The mids are nice and clean and clear. The overtones are not in my face. They're not abrasive. They're also not lacking or muted or, what's the best way to put it? Blunted. Like you take a spike and then you smooth it and turn it into a rounded top. Like the dynamics are somewhat lacking at the extreme points. This doesn't do any of that. So it's a technically very good set. It looks beautiful. It's very expensive, and I would advise you to try to find somebody that has a library that's maybe more leaning towards classical music or more broad than mine, because I'm really talking about rock and hip-hop mostly with some classical. So I think that the target they're going for is probably not this reviewer. There's nothing about it that jumps out and says, man, this is like a deal breaker, or they really need to improve that, which I'm easy to say to people because what are you going to do, not send me again? That's like half the hobby. That's 80% of the hobby. That doesn't bother me at all. There's nothing like that jumps out. I simply think this is a case of the target being not me. But I know that there is a target, like the Hexa. I go back to that again. I said that's something that Mark will probably like, and he ends up giving it 5 stars. I think that the reviewers out there that you hear referring to classical music more probably would be a fan of this, because it does play that well. And I think that the fact that the people that are behind this and tuned it and listened to it and thought that this sounded great, playing an instrument that perhaps the reviewer is familiar with and maybe plays, like a violin, for example, it might resonate with them. Literally, no pun intended. So good luck to the company, and I hope that the target audience that you're looking for grabs this and you guys move and do other stuff. And if you do stuff that has a little more low end, whether you think that's what you personally like, or you're going to start to go for a broader market, I would be somebody I hope you would consider in the future, because I obviously listen to the low end a little bit more than other people, so that's my thing. So good luck to you guys. Thank you for setting out. Sorry for the delay. Appreciate the patience. They didn't lean or say anything I suggest or say. My delay, they tapped me on the shoulder a couple times, so I apologize for that. But otherwise, they were very smooth to deal with, and there was no, like, can you do this, can you do that? Sometimes people try to manage, and that, I really get allergic to that. There was none of that here. So as a company, everything seems to be totally cool. Good luck to them, and I'll see you guys in a couple days, and I am out.